Oh, fantastic to be back here in Croke Park so soon after an All-Ireland win. Brilliant to be joined by the legendary Eoin Kelly. And Eoin, looking out here, isn't it just wonderful to be back here again after the fantastic All-Ireland win for Tipperary?
Yeah, it's amazing to see it. See all the work that goes on behind the scenes. See 4 or 5 guys out with lawnmowers cutting the grass, and I suppose we don't see this as a player. You don't see it when you're in a coaching role with a team. You certainly don't see it as a supporter because you're caught up in the razzmatazz before the game and that. But to see it out here today and to probably have witnessed what we saw here 2 weeks ago, Tip and Cork All-Ireland final.
Oh, it meant so much to Tipperary people, and people are talking about it as the greatest ever win. And I suppose you have to put it in context of where Tipperary were at the start of the year. The last 2-3 years since Liam Cahill came in, and like it has been a long journey for Liam Cahill and this team to lift that cup.
When Liam took the job, I suppose he looked at making changes, which he did as the couple of years went on. And I suppose if you spoke with Liam, he'd probably say even on his journey, he's become even a better manager and grown as a manager. And that can even be by introducing guys into the backroom team and changing up personnel within the squad and that. And I think we saw that this year.
And I suppose that win in Ennis was probably the catalyst, but to even get there, they had to start the league well. I remember talking to you last winter and you said if Tip can win their first 2 league games against Galway and Wexford, they'll be on the road. And the momentum was brewing.
It was, and I was even chatting to guys after the All-Ireland final, and I just brought it back to the Tip Galway game in Salthill at the start of the year in the league. As long as I was involved with Tipperary, you never went up to Salthill and came out of there in January, February, March in a league game too easy. Tipperary, if you remember back, had a comprehensive win that day. They really showed how fit and hungry they were for the season ahead. And even when you think back to that team, I'd say 11 or 12 of those players played most of the league games and even played most of the championship games. So the one learning you could get from Tip throughout the league was that they had a settled team. And then as it rolled on, you'll begin to realise that Liam and his management team kind of knew his top 20, 21 or 22 players. And that included Noel coming off the bench, Oisin O'Donoghue coming off the bench. And they all had big impacts as the season went on. So I think you could see that the hunger that was shown earlier on in the league, it followed right through. And even to get to a league final, again, it was down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh against Cork. Sea of Red down there again, full house for that league final. Cork probably blitzed Tipperary for maybe 6 or 8 minutes, just before half time, hit 3 goals. But I think the learnings that Tipperary were picking up along the way really stood to them in the latter stages of the championship. And you can't forget either, the younger players were getting big game experience. League final, full house down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, that's massive experience. And to go through all that, it's just, you're growing as a player.
And, the arch enemy for many, many decades for Tipperary hurlers was always Kilkenny, Leinster champions. They were favourites going into it. But it suited Tip in some respects being the underdogs because they had been all year.
It did, yeah. And Kilkenny, you must remember, were after winning their 6th Leinster final in a row. So the experience they have in Croke Park and in winning tight games and even in winning silverware, Tipperary were, and probably rightly so, the underdogs, because the last time Tipperary had been in Croke Park in the championship was 2019, and kind of that was the worry. Would these younger players familiarise themselves with Croke Park quickly? And I think we saw in the first 10 minutes, they probably didn't. And it was 9 points to a goal, maybe after 10 minutes, and Tipperary probably weren't getting their hands on the ball. It looked like they were probably, stage fright, maybe is the word you'd use. But once John McGrath got that goal, they seemed to just settle into the game, and you could see they went for it. And it was actually interesting. Tipperary probably took on Kilkenny's strongest line, which sometimes is the Kilkenny full back line, like some Mikey Butler, Ewell Lawler. They're renowned for being fabulous players, which they are. But I think John McGrath, Jason Ford and Darren McCarthy that day, you could see they were looking for the ball, and you had Jake Morris outside. They really went for the juggler inside, and we got great reward scoring 3 goals.
Late on in that game, Owen, we saw one of the young guns this season, Oisin O'Donoghue, star man for the under-20s alongside Darren McCarthy and Sam O'Farrell as well. And Oisin O'Donoghue was thrown into the mix. The curve was against Tipperary. You kind of felt Kilkenny had the initiative, extra player on the field at that moment in time. Oisin got the ball down here, just over our shoulder, over at the Hill 16 end. A wonder goal.
Oh, it was fabulous. And you know what? I suppose it was Liam Cahill being brave as well. I think he mentioned that word throughout the year. Do you know, he put Oisin in, a heat of battle, a couple of minutes ago, Tipperary behind. So I'd say Liam was saying, look, if we win the game, we win the game. But if we don't win the game, look at the young players that have got massive experience. I'd say he knew when he was throwing in Oisin that there was probably something going to happen, because it happened in the Waterford game. He came on, scored a goal. It happened in the Galway game. He came on and scored a goal. But I'd say what Tipperary will be really happy with is Kilkenny had a couple of chances to clear that possession, but Tipperary were just fighting. They were getting stuck in. They were just going into the tackle, bodies on the line, and ultimately it broke to Oisin. And I'd say if you asked Oisin to this day, did he know where he was hitting the ball, he'd probably say just in the direction of the goal, and it went into the top corner. And Tipperary didn't look back after that.
You've scored goals like that in Croke Park, you know, that matter, and in other venues as well. What does it bring to a team?
Scoring a goal at that time gives you the belief that your team can go right to the end of the game, right to the death. Because if that was a big play, I think a massive play happened in the Davin end probably a couple of minutes later, when Robert Doyle cleared the ball off the line from John Donnelly's shot. And probably that led to Tipperary getting in to the All-Ireland final. Just probably showed you the Tipperary mindset as well. Robert Doyle, the cornerback, was back there on the line helping his goalkeeper out, because everyone afterwards kind of didn't even know who made the save until we saw it on TV afterwards again. So, you know, big plays, and sometimes big players step up for big plays, and I suppose we even saw that with the likes of Noel McGrath. Was one of the guys that was down there turning over one or two of the Kilkenny lads to make that ball spill for Oisin O'Donoghue's goal. So, look, I think that was Tipperary all year. They were their grit and their determination.
That brings us nicely onto the All-Ireland final, and it's a day that'll live long in the memory of Tipperary supporters. A sea of red and blue and gold out there. Going into the game, very few gave Tipperary a chance, but it had been like that all year. But at the same time, there was that quiet, steely confidence. And Tipperary people will always back themselves in a battle on the hurling field against Cork.
Quiet was the word, because even in Tipperary, there was nothing coming out of the camp. The team was very quiet. Done their media work, got it out of the way quick. Playing Cork then 3 times in the one season. It was the 3rd time they were going to come up against them in big games. So that's something too that's very hard for the opposition even to deal with. But I think the massive masterstroke by Liam Cahill and his management team was the way that they set up against Cork from the off. And I was even doing a couple of preview nights before the All-Ireland final, Thursday maybe and Friday night, and Cork had hit us for a couple of goals in both games, the Munster Championship and in the league final. And the question was being asked, what will Tipperary do defensively? You know, how will they counteract Cork? Will they play with a sweeper? And if I'm being honest with you, my answer was, I don't think they'll play with a sweeper. Don't think they'll play with a +1. Okay, their half forwards, their midfielders and half backs might work back and try and cut out that threat, because they conceded no goal against Kilkenny, and you could really see Tip's mindset that day was, we're not going to concede a goal. You could see them scrambling back, all working for each other hunting impacts. But then once the ball was thrown in, and to see Brian O'Meara played as the +1, he was the spare man back in the back line. And not only did he cover over and back, but he actually sat in the number 7 position, which meant then that Cork's options was to pop the ball to the other side of the pitch. And that's where Tipperary took on Cork in a battle.
Monday night at the homecoming in Thurles, I met the 2 Johnnies, and they were telling me that Eoin Kelly said to us at half-time, Tip are going to win this, Tip are going to storm on in this game. And it panned out that way.
And just chatting to them, their heads were down and they're, oh, geez, after getting the goal before half-time. I said, look, okay, lads, they got the goal. But I said, this is a 2 or 3 point game. I said, Tipperary. And I was watching Tip off the ball. That's where I really enjoyed Tip. You could see that they were on it. They were doing their jobs, doing their roles. Darren McCarthy was out here scurrying around. It was funny, you wouldn't know who the Cork free man was. Obviously, we had a +1, so you wouldn't know who the Cork free man was. So you could just see that Tipperary seemed to have everything right from a tactical and a system style of play. You know, you could just see the energy draining out of Cork. Afterwards, when everybody left Croke Park, I think everyone was kind of puzzled to how Cork didn't show up for that second half. And look, they were unlucky at one stage. They had a ball that dropped, hit the post, came down on the line, because I was down that side in the stand. I saw it on the line, hit the post again when it dropped. Ree Shelley came out with it. Coolness. Found, I think, Ronan Maher. Found Jake Morris. Jake put the ball over the bar as he thought. Patrick Collins brought it down. And no better man than John McGrath just to be sniffing around for an opportunity. And I think the coolness and calmness of John, he was so cool, and he stuck the ball in the back of the net.
Those iconic moments. I mean, there's a couple of pictures that stand out for me after the season. One is Oisin O'Donoghue with the arms up, Maradona-like, to the crowd in Hill 16. The other, John McGrath with his hurley up in the air, tapping it into the net past Patrick Collins, breaking Cork hearts, essentially.
No better man than John McGrath. This wasn't his first goal scored in the All-Ireland final. He went on to win a penalty after that then. Again, just caught the ball, turned Eoin Downey pulls him down. Second yellow card, he's off. Now Tipperary are in the ascendancy here, 15 against 14. But John McGrath's third goal, the bravery that he showed in following the flight of the ball from once it left. I'm not sure who would deliver that ball in again. The bravery he showed in his eyes completely on the flight of the ball and just touching that ball in past Patrick Collins. Like, that for me, that just shows you how much focus and willingness John McGrath was to even to get poleaxed in that play.
The game went on in that fashion then. Tipperary pushed on. Cork faded. 2 points in the second half is not going to win any match at any level. Like, what do you think that is?
Everything Cork hit in that second half. They hit the crossbar, hit the post. Alan Connolly went through, and I was ready for him to pull the trigger to score, and he offloaded the ball to Brian Hayes, wrong up. They just took every wrong option. And I think even missing the penalty, Conor Lehan, like, you could just see Ree Shelley actually wanted to save that penalty. You could just see it in his eyes that no, there was no way this is going in, even though it was one of the last pucks of the game. It was just Tipperary had him there, and I'd say it was relief for Cork maybe when the full-time whistle went, because at that stage there was nothing going right for them. And when a team, and we've all been there, when you get to the heat of the battle and you're in a game and it's totally going against you like that, it's the most horrible place to be.
After that, Owen, following on with the order of events, the players were down there on the field where they're cutting the grass right now, looking up at Ronan Maher collecting the cup, and he made a fabulous speech on All-Ireland final day. And one thing that stood out for me in the speech was, you know, how he mentioned Dylan Quirk, and he spoke about the spirit of Dylan being with them on the field and in the dressing room.
Yeah, look, having known Dylan and having worked with him in 2019, 20 and 21, like, it was probably his personality. You know, he was a big character. I suppose he led Clonty Rossmore to the county championship in 2018, you know, as an under-21 player, like taking frees, taking sidelines, centre of the attack at 11, you know. So it just showed you the character that chap had, like, and you know, he was one of the lads, like, he always had a smile on his face. You know, I'd say if the lads were going celebrating, whether they won or lost, he was in the middle of them. And sometimes a player like that, people gravitate towards him. And that's what I'd say with Dylan. I'd say his fellow teammates gravitated towards him because there was a positive energy vibe off him. Like, and you know, he had worked with Liam Cahill through his minor days, 21 days. Then he was involved with the seniors under Liam Sheedy and was obviously with Colin Bonner and had played with his teammates up through the ranks. And then when that tragic incident happened, like in Semple Stadium on that Saturday evening at that club match, you know, it definitely knocked those Tipperary players, I'd say, for 12 or 18 months. I'd say it probably just made him think about hurling, about life, just about everything in general. It would have an effect on you. And it probably took those Tipperary players and his teammates a long, long time to get over Dylan's death. And you know, they said from day one that they were bringing him with them on whatever journey they were going to go on. And look at the journey that they did go on over the 3 years, we'll say, from, you know, being down and out, not getting out of Munster, some poor defeats, right up to climbing the steps of the Hogan stand. And, you know, Ronan Maher, then what a leader they had in Ronan Maher. His speech was unbelievable afterwards. You know, he just led as a player on the pitch, played a captain's part, snuffed out Brian Hayes, who was going for probably Player of the Year if Cork had to be successful. But not only that, I think Ronan again is is a kind of a captain that he lets his hurling do the talking. And then knowing Ronan's personality, you know, he'd have his arm around all those younger players, bringing them along. He'd be one of the lads. He'd be in the younger group brigade as quicker as he'd be in his older group brigade if they were socialising. That's Ronan, and I think we have seen one of the best Tipperary hurlers of any generation in Ronan Maher.
Of course, Ronan ended up on that wall of legends below in Thurles Sarsfields, and like the spirit, the energy of Dylan was within that team. And like you had that experience as well that Ronan Maher had of lifting that cup, you know. You had the speech made out before it as well, had you?
Yeah, no, I remember 2010. I just had bullet points, but I was prepared, and I probably just told you the mindset that you were in as a captain and as a squad. Remember then when you win, your emotions on the pitch afterwards, it's unbelievable excitement. You get to only celebrate with your players for a couple of seconds, because next thing there's an official around you pulling you away. You're heading up the steps of the Hogan stand, and you're in game mode again, because your adrenaline is still going, and you know as captain then you've one more role to carry out.
It's amazing that time. It was Tipperary and Kilkenny, I suppose, at the peak of their powers there. And that day, I think TJ Reid was the Kilkenny captain, and he was in first year in school when you were a senior in St. Kieran's College, and he kind of looked up to you in some ways.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, when a first year comes in, they're always going to look at the senior hurling team in the school, and the fifth years and the 6 years inside in the school. And it's funny, I actually remember swapping a helmet with TJ when he was only a first year, and actually I'd say it was the same helmet I had on when I was shaking hands with them, both captains, before that 2010 All-Ireland final. So it's funny the way things happen and where helmets and hurleys end up and that. But you know, I would have stayed in TJ's home house then after a couple of the college's All-Ireland finals back in 2000, and his mum Mary would have cooked the breakfast the morning after and that, and she passed away as well, so she probably didn't get to see all TJ's incredible days, like, and what an incredible player he was and still is, like, and how Kilkenny still need TJ in that forward line. But so when you finish up, they're the great memories you have. And even 2000, this year's All-Ireland final for me was a small bit different. I brought my own kids to it, and to see the All-Ireland through their eyes is a new experience as well, like coming in Jones's Road, seeing the stadium, meeting a few ex-players, meeting a few of your teammates. It's great to see it through their eyes, that they look at these players as stars, and all those players, I suppose, both Tipperary and Cork, have inspired the next generation without even knowing that they're doing it. And that's something that is needed in the game.
I guess looking back at your own career, was that 2010 win the highlight? What other highlights stand out for you?
I suppose I started off my career in 2000. I joined the Tipperary panel. Nick Ings was the manager, and then in 2001 we won it all: the league, the Munster final, and the All-Ireland. I think you're thinking, this is great. Then the year after, 2002, my own club Mullinahone historically won the Dan Breen Cup, the county final, for the first time in our history ever, having been beaten in a final in 1997. So you're 19, 20. And you think this is the norm. Then you begin to realise as the years go on how lucky you are and how hard it is to get back to that stage. And you begin to realise too, the glory days are lovely and the highs are highs, but the lows can be very low as well. Losing Munster Championship games, losing All-Ireland qualifiers, club losing all county semi-finals, quarter-finals. So it just makes you realise that the hard work has to be put in, and you have to continuously do it. And once one season finishes, you actually have to be getting ready for the next season.
Just finally, Owen, I suppose all those players that are playing inter-county now go back to their clubs for the rest of the summer and into the autumn and the winter, and then it all starts again for the inter-county. Quick prediction for 2026, you know, how's it going to look in Munster, Leinster and the All-Ireland just finally?
The Munster Championship is the big one, and I suppose it's the gift that keeps on giving, really, like, isn't it? It's you never know what's going to happen right up until the final day. There's always twists and turns in it, like, so I probably, the three teams that have come out of Munster, and I don't know what Jarlath Byrne is on about, a small restructure to the hurling championship. I think he said that that's something that's going to come up in conversation. Maybe a 4-team might come out, 4-team in Leinster might come out. He was talking maybe the Joe McDonagh team that qualifies may not go into the All-Ireland series proper. we'll wait to see what happens there. That'll be interesting. But definitely I would like to see more teams, the 4th team coming out of Munster and even the 4th team in Leinster. And even if you get another 1 or 2 extra games that are played maybe even in a smaller venue, the likes of Nolan Park, you're just promoting hurling again and you're just bringing more hype and more talk to it. Look, the 3 teams that get out of Munster, I think will always get to the latter stage of the Championship All-Ireland semi-finals. And then Kilkenny seem to know what it takes to win that Leinster Championship. But I think a team that's coming hot on their heels is going to be Dublin over the next season or 2. Great manager in place, consistent now in the last 2 years, have got out of Leinster. Competed against Cork last year, were beaten by 4 points in Thurles. I think that gave them a bit of belief that, look, we can compete with a top team. They beat Limerick. Okay, people might say Limerick were complacent on the day. They still beat Limerick in the championship. Rocked into Croke Park then, and I suppose we mentioned Brave earlier on, but they didn't play with probably a +1 against Cork that day. They pushed on, conceded 7 goals, 7-26 to, was it 2-26 or 2-21, scored 2-21, but we'll get big learnings from that. And I think they're a team that might surprise somebody in Leinster in the next year or 2. But to predict the All-Ireland winners, so much has to go right throughout the season. I suppose the only thing I can predict is I'd say it's going to be a Munster team that will win the All-Ireland 2026. The last 8 All-Ireland championships have been, including this year, have been won by Munster teams. So it just tells you the strength that's in the Munster Championship, but more importantly, the belief it gives you when you somehow get out of Munster. You have that belief that you can get to that All-Ireland final. And then as we've seen, those games can just take on a life of their own, as did the Tip Cork All-Ireland final.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you so much.